This just confirms what we all feared. Yes, of course, we are talking about Nikolaj Ehlers and the Nikolaj Ehlers sweepstakes, which have been won by the Carolina Hurricanes here on day 3 of NHL free agent frenzy. So yes, Nikolaj Ehlers will be joining the Hurricanes next year. He will be getting paid $8.5 million for the next 6 years, which is a contract that the Winnipeg Jets more than likely offered him, maybe even offered him more, who knows, but we're here to talk about Nikolaj Ehlers and why he didn't sign in Winnipeg. And I'm going to ask the question, does Winnipeg have a player management problem? But before we do hop into the video, I couldn't help but notice in the past 28 days, it looks like 87.9% of the people who watched our videos here at Jets Digest were not subscribed to the channel. I'd highly suggest you throw a subscription. Lots more Jets stuff to talk in this offseason. Of course, we are still waiting for RFA signings. We're talking Dylan Samberg, Gabe Vilardi, and Morgan Barron. And on top of that, plenty of trade rumors likely to swirl around this offseason. So, many things to talk about. Make sure you are tuned in and don't miss a video. But let's hop into the video. Let's hop into Nikolaj Ehlers. And I feel like I need to give a couple disclaimers here. I'm a huge Jets fan, as, you know, if that wasn't obvious enough. And I loved Nikolaj Ehlers. I thought that he was such a phenomenal player and brought something super duper unique to the Winnipeg Jets that it was difficult for them to find elsewhere. Such an elite combination of speed and skill that I think the Jets are really going to miss next year, and I'm a little bit fearful for how the year is going to go for the former President Trophy winners. But on top of all of that, let's head back to Kevin Cheveldayoff, which also, I feel like I also need to note here, I would not have wanted the Jets to trade Ehlers at the deadline or anything like that. In a season where they are gunning for the President's Trophy and of course ended up winning it, I thought this season was a phenomenal opportunity for the Jets to really take a swing at going for a cup. Of course, it was a little bit disappointing the way it ended against Dallas, but nevertheless, let's talk about Ehlers and why he did not sign with the Jets. So, let's go back to Kevin Cheveldayoff once again. He came out and said, after the playoff run was over, he came out and said, we're going to give Nikolaj Ehlers the Jet for Life offer. We want him here. We want to keep him. So again, that makes me really think that a deal like $8.5 million over 6 years would have been something that the Jets would have likely offered, maybe even offered him more, maybe even gave him more term. But alas, what happened with Nikolaj Ehlers was it really came down to fit. And let's hop over to our graphic here. We have a quote from Elliot Friedman on the Kenny and Rennie show. Make sure you check out the Kenny and Rennie show. We love those guys. Great post-game coverage here for the Jets. But anyways, the quote goes, Ehlers was frustrated at times in Winnipeg because the first line opportunity wasn't really there unless it was on his off wing, which is a completely factual thing. Obviously, the top line has been, on the left wing spot. Kyle Connor, ever since he came into the league, he was playing with, Connor, Scheifele, Wheeler. Now, of course, Connor, Scheifele, Vilardi. And, we never really had a look at Nikolaj Ehlers on that top line. I know when Rick Bowness came over to the Jets a couple of years ago, when he was first starting off his 2-year tenure with the Jets, he said he wanted to see Connor, Scheifele, Ehlers together on a line. Unfortunately, there was an injury early that season, and after that, we just never saw that pairing, that grouping together ever really again in extended minutes. So, what's the problem? What's the problem? If you're not getting first line minutes, what are you getting? Well, let's head over to our J Fresh card here. You can see here his time on ice was listed as a third liner. The reason he was listed as a third liner is because, actually, I have an even better graphic here. Give me one moment. This shows his time on ice, his stats from this past year. And if you look at his time on ice, you can see here 15 minutes, 48 seconds was on average what he played, which is, frankly, a joke in my opinion, considering how good of a player this is. But the reason why he had to play third line minutes is because with the current makeup of the Winnipeg Jets, having that top line of, Connor, Scheifele, Vilardi, as much as I love all those guys, and I trust me, I do, unfortunately, they're not like a Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, Uh, unfortunately, that line needs to play against weaker competition. If you put that line up against, Sasha Barkov's line, again, I mentioned Nathan MacKinnon, say who you want, whichever top line of a contending team you want to go to. Uh, Unfortunately, that group of players does not win that matchup. And so, smartly, I will say, the Winnipeg Jets have known this for a while, and that's why the Winnipeg Jets loves to rely on their third line. They love Adam Lowry, they love Nino Niederreiter, and formerly Mason Appleton this past year, who, by the way, had more time on ice than Nikolaj Ehlers did most nights, which is crazy, but I understand why you need to do that because the Jets needed to play Lowry's line against the opposing team's top line in order to, shut them down, make them be less of a factor, and then you can give Scheifele, an opposing team's second line, third line. And against those lines, they have no problem going out there playing the skilled type of hockey that they do. So it's a great game plan, but the issue is that the people who are supposed to be on your second line really end up playing third line minutes, and a guy like Nikolaj Ehlers was, I would say, by far the one who had got the short end of the stick here the most. But anyways, we're already looking at his JFresh chart here. If you don't know how these work, blue is good, and when you see a number, that's a percentile rank in the league. So just in general, he ranks 94th percentile, so an absolute star, in my opinion. He's fantastic at generating even strength offense. He's fine defensively. I would say that mostly is attributed to the fact that if he picks up the puck in the defensive zone, he's able to carry it out of the zone and, eliminate that threat. He's awesome on the power play. He's great at finishing. He scores goals. He gets tons of first assists. He draws a ton of penalties. I love Nikolaj Ehlers, and I'm really, really sad to see him go. And unfortunately, like I said, this is an issue with how the Winnipeg Jets managed this player. He never really got the chance to play with Scheifele, despite the fact that when he did play with Scheifele, let's go back a couple years when Pierre-Luc Dubois was still here. You'd see Kyle Connor playing with Pierre-Luc Dubois and Cole Perfetti. And then Nikolaj Ehlers was given the opportunity to play with Mark Scheifele, and in those minutes, those two guys together generated numbers that looks like something that a top line, that could go up against other teams' opposing top lines. Their results were very, very good, and I've always been frustrated that Nikolaj Ehlers never was given that chance to hop back on that top line. And clearly, it mattered to him. We went back to that quote from Friedman, and very clearly, fit was very important to Nick. The money, I don't think, was the case. I think 8.5 times 6 is an offer that he would have received from, obviously the Jets, from the Avalanche, from the Capitals, all the teams that you saw that were sniffing around him. That was an offer that was likely made to him, potentially even more. But he, after taking a couple days to decide, he ended up choosing Carolina. I would imagine Carolina's pitch included, hey, we're going to play you with Sebastian Aho. We're going to play you with Seth Jarvis. And, at very worst, you go down a line and you play with, potentially Svechnikov. Many, many different things that can go on there. Oh, we're going to give you first line power, top power play minutes, which, the Jets didn't do until this previous season. And voila, the Jets power play was magically fixed after years of being terrible. So I'm a little worried for that going into next year. But clearly fit was super duper important to him. And, this is where I start to raise the question about player management. And again, I've already said, I don't think that the Jets should have traded him or anything like that at the deadline. You have to go for your cup run. And if anything, I'm very critical of how little activity the Jets had at the deadline. But from a player management perspective, there have been more than just a couple players who have left Winnipeg who, are actually valuable players. I'm not talking about Andrew Cobb. I'm not talking about Mason Appleton. I'm not talking about those guys who are kind of middle sixers who, very obviously were going to get signed to too much money by another team. Thank you, Detroit, for taking those guys off our hands and giving them a little too much money, in my opinion. But I actually look on defense, and, this past year, defense is always a place where Kevin Cheveldayoff likes to try and add at the deadline. You got to have more than 8 bodies is what he always has said. And the Jets do certainly have that right now. But if we look back to a couple years, there's a couple defensemen who the Jets have let go, which really, really, it's difficult. And let's talk about them. Let's talk about them. We're going to talk about Declan Chisholm. We're going to talk about Jonathan Kovacevic, two players who, came through the Moose's development system, proved their worth on the Moose, and then when it was time for them to become a regular Jet, when they weren't able to be, sent back down without waivers, they had to fight it out in camp. And both of these guys, when they came to camp, looked good. They looked like they were poised to be, great players for the Winnipeg Jets. I'll even pull up Kovacevic here, which is a right-handed defenseman. A right-handed defenseman, one of the guys, a shutdown right-handed defenseman. Those are super easy to find in the league, obviously. I'm saying sarcastically, of course. But these were two guys who were placed on waivers, so the Jets got nothing for these players. And, the Devils picked up Jonathan Kovacevic. He's now playing in a second pair role, a second pair right-handed defenseman, which, if you're trading that on the open market, you can get a pretty penny for a solid defenseman. We look at Luke Schenn, who's, barely a third pair defenseman at this point in his career. And what did the Jets trade for him? A second? I can't remember. One of either him or Tanev was for a second. The point is, these are useful players. They're young too. And, if these guys were given their opportunity to play with the Jets, who knows? You don't have to trade for Luke Schenn. You don't have the Logan Stanley issue. And frankly, Logan Stanley is kind of the arbiter of this, at least management's view on Logan Stanley. They see this 6'7" defenseman and they go, he's going to be, as long as he puts it together, he's going to be a menace. He's the next Zdeno Chara, of course. We say that jokingly, especially now. But now Logan Stanley is 27 years old now, turning 28 soon. And we saw this past offseason that he's not in Scott Arniel's top six. Hayden Fleury definitely surpassed him on the depth chart. And, this is a guy who the Jets have put a lot of eggs in that basket. And the fact that it's not panning out makes you look back on the loss of a guy like Kovacevic, who's a second pair defenseman now. Maybe if this guy's in the system, you don't have to give Neil Pionk such a long deal. Maybe if this guy's in the system, and then that opens up another spot for a guy like Salamonson from the Moose to come in this next year. And just in general, it's just a bad thing, asset management. You don't want to lose players and get nothing in return, especially when they end up being good players. And listen, I know this is hindsight 2020. There's no way for us to really truly know at that time that these guys were going to be either serviceable or even good, like in Kovacevic's case. But it just kind of speaks to the management of certain players. And the Jets see certain things and they go, we need to do that. We have to put our eggs in that basket. We have to make sure that Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele are happy together. What happens if Kyle Connor doesn't want to sign with the Jets next year? Like, what? We're at the point where he's up in a year now, and if he leaves too, like we're facing almost like a rebuild. I mean, at this point, I would even say we're facing a retool. So regardless, I'm rambling here. I know I am, but it's just very frustrating to see, the ideals that the Winnipeg Jets are trumpeting, and also just kind of the, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. I'm frustrated if you couldn't tell. I don't know. It just seems like the Jets like to pick their bed and sleep in that one, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult, and you don't want to be making players frustrated with their situation, because already Winnipeg faces enough issues trying to get players to come here and to stay here. So this is more of a thing that I'm looking forward to the future. I'm looking for, I don't want Cole Perfetti to leave eventually if he gets frustrated with his usage. Not that he necessarily deserves more than second line minutes, but I think he's been good enough that he could definitely take a step, and he'll probably be on the first power play next year, but you never know. That might be Gus Nyquist's spot. Like, that's what I'm curious about. Like, maybe Jonathan Taves is playing there. Who knows? But my point is, I just think that the Jets need to have a bit of a more future. They tout themselves as a draft and develop team, and yet they do things without a bit of force, and it is a little frustrating. But regardless, maybe I'm off base here. You let me know what you think. If you enjoyed the video, throw a like on it. If you didn't, throw a like on it anyways. Just it helps us with the channel. But have yourself a good one. Make sure you are subscribed and enjoy your summer year round.